Imagine a murder case where the victim's ghost takes the stand. Sounds like fiction? Think again. Hello, everyone. Thank you for stopping by the first episode of The Truth in the Shadows, a factual, history-based horror and paranormal and unsolved mystery podcast where we will be going over true cases from the past, ghostly, otherworldly, or unexplained that you may not have heard about or you may have, and this might be just a different outlook. However, it's from my perspective. If you do enjoy this kind of content, please do be sure to leave a follow, leave a like, leave your feedback, let me know what you think, and please sit back, grab a cup of coffee, or even a cup of tea while we reveal the truth that's in the shadows. Imagine a murder case where the victim returned from the grave to name her own killer. This isn't a ghost story whispered around a campfire. It's a real case, one that took place in the quiet hills of Greenbrier County, West Virginia in the year 1897. A case so strange, so unique, that it remains the only known instance in American history where the alleged testimony of a ghost helped convict a murderer. Tonight, we're diving into the chilling tale of Zona, known today as the Greenbrier Ghost, a young woman whose death was brushed aside until her mother claimed she came back from beyond to demand justice. This is not a story of creaking floors or cold spots. This is a story of love, suspicion, death, and the supernatural. And the deeper you go, the more impossible it is to look away. Let's go back to the 19th century, the year 1897. The place is Greenbrier County. Nestled deep in the Appalachian hills of West Virginia life, here life is quiet, rural, and shaped by hard labor, family, and faith. People lived simple lives. Most were farmers, laborers, and homeowners. The communities were tight-knit, and word traveled fast, but underneath the daily routine there was something else, a deep belief in the unseen. This was a time when folklore wasn't just entertainment, though. It was part of life. Ghost stories weren't just fun, they were warnings. Sometimes truths, dreams were signs. The dead weren't always silent. And in this backdrop of superstition and spiritualism, the story of Zona unfolded. Zona was just 23 years old. She was described as quiet and kind, a gentle soul. Not long before her death, she had married a man, Erasmus Stribling Trout Shue, who went by Trout. Trout was new in town, a blacksmith by trade. He was strong, charming, and secretive, but Zona seemed happy with him, or so it appeared. Then, on January 23rd, 1897, everything changed. A young boy working for Trout was sent to the couple's home on an errand. What he found would stay with him for the rest of his life. Zona was lying at the bottom of the stairs, lifeless. Her body was stretched out, legs together, one arm by her side, the other across her chest, her eyes wide open. The boy ran for help, and soon Trout arrived, but his behavior was unusual. He cradled Zona's body, weeping uncontrollably, refusing to let anyone near her. Even the local doctor, George Knapp, was barely able to examine her. Trout insisted Zona had died from everlasting faint, a catch-all phrase with no real medical meaning. Dr. Knapp noted bruising on her neck, but didn't press. After all, he'd once treated Zona for a female trouble. And under pressure from her hysterical husband, he ruled it a natural death. And just like that, Zona was buried. Case closed until her mother started having dreams. Zona was buried quickly, but her mother, Mary Jane Heister, wasn't at peace. From the moment she heard of her daughter's death, something gnawed at her. A mother's intuition, perhaps, or something more. She had never trusted Trout Shue. There was something about him that felt wrong, controlling, and cold. Now her daughter was dead, and Mary Jane couldn't let it go, so she prayed and waited, and then the dreams began. Over 4 nights, Mary Jane claimed Zona's spirit appeared to her. The visions were vivid, not wispy, dreamlike memories, but full, waking experiences. She said Zona stood at the foot of her bed, wearing the very dress she died in. In these visits, Zona spoke, not in riddles, but plainly. She told her mother that Trout had abused her, that he flew into a rage because she hadn't made him meat for dinner, He had grabbed her by the neck and snapped it. Zona even described how he crushed her windpipe and then turned her head until her neck broke between the first and second vertebrae. The ghost didn't just accuse, she demonstrated. Mary Jane said Zona turned her head a full 180 degrees until it faced backwards. That detail would soon prove important. Armed with this terrifying story, Mary Jane didn't hesitate. She went to the prosecutor, John Preston, and begged him to reopen the case. At first, he was skeptical. Who wouldn't be? A ghost revealing the cause of death? But he agreed something was strange. The doctor's original examination had been rushed. Trout's behavior had raised eyebrows, and so he ordered Zona's body exhumed. The autopsy was performed in secret at the local schoolhouse. As the body was removed from the casket, doctors noticed something immediately: a loosened neck, bruising around the throat, and then the final chilling confirmation. Her neck had been broken, just as the ghost described. The break was between the first and second vertebrae, and her windpipe was crushed. Zona hadn't died of natural causes. She had been murdered. Trout Shue was arrested and charged with murder. He pled not guilty, but the trial that followed would make history, because Mary Jane Hester took the stand, and she told the court that her daughter had come back from the dead to speak. The trial of Erasmus Stribling Trout Shue began in June of 1897, just 5 months after Zona's death. It took place at the Greenbrier County Courthouse in Lewisburg, and from the start, it wasn't just a trial about murder, it became a trial about belief. The prosecution built its case on medical evidence: Zona's broken neck, the bruising, the strange way Trout acted in the days following her death, his refusal to let anyone near her body, his insistence on dressing herself, and his increasingly odd behavior. But the real spark, the reason this case remains famous today, came when Mary Jane Hester took the stand. She spoke clearly, calmly. She told the jury about her dreams, how Zona came to her 4 nights in a row, and the ghost described the murder in terrifying detail, how her daughter's spirit demonstrated the very injury the doctors would later confirm. The defense attorney saw an opportunity. He tried to use Mary Jane's testimony to discredit her, to make her look unstable, delusional. He questioned her about the dreams, asked if they might have been imagined, maybe grief-induced, maybe just superstition. But Mary Jane never flinched. "I was not dreaming," she said. "I do not dream when I am wide awake." And I was wide awake. Now here's what's important. The ghost's testimony wasn't the official evidence, but it had already done its work. It had pushed the investigation forward. It had led to the exhumation. And everything Mary Jane said, every chilling detail Zona supposedly revealed, matched the autopsy. Even without believing in ghosts, the jury couldn't ignore the facts, and Trout Shue didn't help himself. On the stand, he came off as arrogant and evasive. He told the court he expected to marry 7 women in his lifetime. Zona was his 3rd. They also discovered he had a violent past. His second wife had divorced him for abuse. His first wife had died under suspicious circumstances. After just over an hour of deliberation, the jury returned a verdict: guilty of murder in the 1st degree. Trout Shue was sentenced to life in prison. He had died just 3 years later in 1900 of an unknown illness while serving his time at the West Virginia State Penitentiary. He never confessed, never showed remorse, but the evidence and the ghost had spoken. So now we ask the question that's probably been forming in your mind. Did a ghost really solve a murder, or was it something else entirely? Let's start with what we know. Mary Jane Hester's account never changed over the years in the interviews, and to anyone asked, she told the same story word for word. To her, it wasn't just a dream. It was a visitation. But some believe Mary Jane didn't need a ghost to know Trout was guilty. They think she already suspected him, and the dreams were a way of expressing that intuition in a way people in her time would understand and take seriously. Remember, this was 1897 in rural Appalachia. Spiritualism was woven into everyday life. People believed in signs, omens, and messages from the dead. Mary Jane's ghost story wasn't dismissed as madness, it was respected. And here's the other side. Skeptics argue that the real key to solving the case wasn't paranormal at all. It was persistence. Mary Jane kept pushing. She refused to accept the first explanation and insisted Zona's body be re-examined. The dreams may have been real to her, or maybe they were a tool. Either way, they led to the truth. There's also the fact that Trout had a dark past, 2 previous wives, 1 dead, 1 driven away. reports of violent behavior. It's entirely possible the case would have fallen apart if he hadn't left such a trail of warning signs. The autopsy, done only after the dreams showed Zona's neck was broken. Prosecution didn't need to rely on ghost stories at trial, but it's the ghost that people remember. And that's part of what makes this case so endearing. It's not just a whodunit, it's about belief, about a mother's love pushing past what the world said was possible, and about how just maybe the dead don't always stay silent. More than a century had passed since Zona Heister was buried in that quiet Greenbrier graveyard. The story has faded from most history books, but not from the hills where it happened. Today, her gravestone still stands, and etched into it beneath her name and the year she died are the words, "The only known case in which testimony from a ghost helped convict a murderer." Skeptics will tell you in this case, it was never about ghosts. It was about just the persistence, not the paranormal, that brought Trout Shue to justice. But others might say something else. That there are things in this world we can't explain, that sometimes justice doesn't rest. And even after death, whether you believe Zona came back from the dead to speak, or believe her mother channeled a truth she couldn't explain, one fact does remain. A killer was walking free, and someone had stopped him. The story of the Greenbrier Ghost is more than a haunting. It's a piece of living folklore, a chilling reminder that the past is never truly buried, and maybe, just maybe, the dead do talk if we're willing to listen. If you've made it this far, thank you for joining me for the first episode of The Truth in the Shadows. We'll be exploring the strange, the forgotten, and the terrifying, the true stories that slip through the cracks of history waiting to be found again. If you want more chilling tales like this, real paranormal cases, haunted places, and the mysteries in the world we tried to forget, be sure to subscribe, leave a comment, and share this video with someone who loves the shadows just as much as we do. And let me know, do you think the Greenbrier Ghost was real, or just a mother's grief turned into a legend? I'd love to hear what you believe. Until next time, stay curious, and remember, the dead may be silent, but the truth always finds a voice.